So the science of taxonomy depends on scientific names. And as we talked about yesterday, we call it the binomial nomenclature system, where everything gets a two-part name. So if we have these three bears, panda, polar bear, grizzly bear, we have their scientific names written out there. We have some rules that we follow. So when you're writing a scientific name, a binomial name, okay, there's a couple things to keep in mind. First of all, if we look at these bears, can you tell which are most closely related to each other? Elizabeth? Why do you say that? Yeah, they have the same, what would we call that? Yeah, they're in the same genus. Okay, the same group. That Ursus, yeah, that's the next level up, or that's a different genus within the same order. So that's how we know the polar bear and the grizzly bear are probably more closely related than they are to the panda. So when we write these names, you probably notice a couple things. What are the rules, you think? Can anyone come up with a rule about how we write those out? Diksha?
There's only two.
There's two words. How about
Genus first.
the genus is first, species is second? Okay. We also capitalize the genus name. Everything else is lowercaseified. And when you write a binomial name, you have to print in italics. Can everyone write in italics?
You just write sideways.
Sideways?
Well, not like sideways, but like.
You did say sideways, right, Lily?
What?
You did say sideways.
I know.
No, you don't actually have to write print in italics. If you were writing on a computer, you could italicize it. When you're writing by hand, you could underline it. It means the same thing.
Zebra. Oh, it's just zebra. Zebra.
All right. Oh, you still need this? I never see the movie The Fantastic Mr. Fox.
Yes! Oh, yes, Krista!
All right, so that's one of my favorite movies. My family's favorite movies. We watch it every Thanksgiving. But anyway, in Fantastic Mr. Fox, when the animals are congregating together, he addresses each of them by their scientific name at the very end, so you may notice that.
Kristoff is the best.
All right, so again, species, a group of members that can interbreed. There's really another part to this. And produce fertile offspring. Because we're going to talk about some things that seem like exceptions to this. So a dog and a wolf, are they the same species?
No. Genus. They're the same species. No.
They're actually not the same species.
Don't they come from like?
So, but here's the thing. A dog and a wolf can interbreed and produce offspring. So that seems to violate what I said earlier about how we define a species. Because a group of members that can interbreed, well, a dog and a wolf can interbreed. The difference is in that part I added on. So that can interbreed and produce fertile offspring. Because the offspring of a dog-wolf hybrid is infertile. It itself cannot reproduce. So they don't actually fit the definition of a species as it should be written. But we would call that dog-wolf offspring a hybrid. So there are situations when two species that are pretty closely related can produce offspring. But typically the offspring themselves are not fertile. They cannot reproduce. So we're going to just talk about a few examples of hybrids. Probably some you've heard of and many you have not.
Could a brown trout and a white trout reproduce?
I don't know that for sure, but they're probably closely related enough that it might be possible, but I haven't heard of that. I haven't heard of many hybrid fish species, but it just may be because I'm not familiar.
Maybe
So probably the most common hybrid that you may have seen before is this one. If you take a male donkey and a female horse, they can produce
a mule?
they produce a mule. A mule is a hybrid animal. Mules have been produced for agricultural purposes. They're strong, they work really hard, but two mules cannot mate and reproduce. Mules are sterile or infertile. So the only way to get another mule is to, again, create a hybrid between a horse and a donkey. Most of these hybrids really only come about in captivity, because in nature, most of the time, two different species are not going to mate together. It does happen once in a while, but not often. It's more likely to happen, like I said, in a zoo, in an aquarium, in agriculture, when you have close related animals around each other a lot. Here's another one. This is a false killer whale and a bottlenose dolphin. And they can, again, this is typically in like an aquarium, they can produce an offspring. It's called a wolphin.
Stop. That is too sick. I need one of these.
They usually, most of these hybrids are named by combining both of the original species names to make the name of the hybrid. The mule doesn't follow that pattern.
The mule is just.
I don't know that you can buy a wolphin.
I'll make it.
Here's another one. A lion and a tiger is one you probably have heard of. Ever seen Napoleon Dynamite?
What? Yes.
No?
Yeah, Drew.
So, what's his favorite animal?
Bobcat.
No?
A liger.
A liger.
What?
A liger is a hybrid between a male lion and a female tiger. So if you look at their binomial names, you can see they're closely related. They're both in the same genus. Okay. There's lots of hybrids within the Panthera genus, because they're all pretty closely related. Another interesting thing, hybrids, there's this concept called hybrid vigor, where often hybrid animals are larger and often stronger than either of the parent species. Okay? Like in South Carolina, they had this like place you could go to, and they had a liger that you could like take a picture with and all this stuff. But it's huge. It's really, really large. A zebra and a horse form a zorse.
Dude, I bet
What? Yep. Yeah, I have a picture of one. So the zebra hybrids are called zebroids in general, and then each individual combination is called like a zorse or a zonkey. And again, you have the pattern of fur coloration of the zebra, but you also have characteristics of the horse. Here's some more.
Oh, we don't have that.
No, these are just some pictures. Not really important, just kind of interesting to talk about. This is a growler bear. It is a grizzly polar bear hybrid.
It looks like it's like progressively.
So this is grizzly polar bear, growler bear.
That's so neat.
It's again, you can notice it's larger than either of the parent species.
Oh my god! That's like an owl. Oh, it's so cute.
So you can buy one of these.
I can.
This is called the Savannah cat. It's a cross between a domestic cat, like a house cat, and a wild serval, which is like an African cat. And so they're, I think I have a video here.
Dude, I was so bad.
This is a goat sheep hybrid. This is an interesting one.
That is a bad cow. That is.
Nope.
That is hen.
This is a cross, yes, between a bison and a cow. It was bred for agricultural purposes. It is called a beefalo. And I'm not making it up. It's really what it's called.
Dude, people like that cat is so cute.
So beefalo. Oh, there it is. Zebra donkey hybrid.
It's like the
Let me go back. I'll come back to that in a minute. So this is another example. This is one example of a hybrid sort of gone wrong. So these are killer bees, and also called Africanized bees. So these were actually created on purpose by people in the 1950s in Brazil. Scientists were trying to produce a type of bee that would produce more honey. And so they are experimenting, because often this hybridization is used to get characteristics that you want from two different types of organisms. So they did this, but when the result was it actually did not produce more honey, so it was not effective. But I think it was 27 groups of these bees escaped their quarantine in Brazil. And over the last 60 years, they have gradually made their way from Brazil up through Central America, into Mexico, into even Texas, and they've started to make their way into the southwest United States. So the killer bees are really, they're basically a very, very aggressive version of a honeybee. And so when an animal or a person, they can kill people, is attacked, they're easily disturbed, they're easily aggravated. And so when a person encounters a swarm of these Africanized bees, they often would get like 10 times as many stings as if it was a normal honeybee that they had come into contact with. And so therefore, that leads to, people can die from too many stings from a bee, even if they're not allergic. And so these bees are sort of spread throughout the southern parts of the United States, and kind of nasty. This is a jaguar.
those are so cute.
That's a jaguar lion hybrid.
That is so beautiful.
Again, you'll notice
That's my cat.
it's like in a zoo. All right, I'm going to go on. We'll come back to the Savannah cat video at the end of class, but I want to finish with this last introduction of dichotomous keys. Ellie, you have a question?
Yeah, can you have like a snake hybrid?
Why
Well,
do you care?
two snakes, if they're closely related, possible. So you cannot have
2 legs?
a dog and
2
cat.
legs, 2 tails?
Guys, you can't have a dog and a cat hybrid. You can't have a snake and a turtle hybrid. So these must be species usually in the same genus, okay, or definitely in the same family. Okay, you can't take wildly unrelated organisms and breed them together. All right, so one other part of taxonomy is how we can identify an unknown species. So here's an example. Here's 2 examples. A dichotomous key is a tool that scientists use to identify an unknown organism. If you were out in your backyard and you collected a wildflower and you didn't recognize it, but you wanted to know what it is, you can look at that wildflower and follow through this dichotomous key and identify exactly what it is. So this is one I had to use in college. This is a Manual of Vascular Plants of Northeast United States and Adjacent Canada, 2nd edition.
Sick.
So yeah, sounds pretty interesting, right? So this whole book is basically a key that you could follow if you're anywhere in the Northeast United States and found a plant. You go through this key You follow a set of instructions and it'll eventually identify what species you're looking at. Here is another one I had to use in college in my dendrology class. This is a fruit key and twig key to trees and shrubs. So if you go pick a twig off a tree this winter and you want to know what it is, bring it in, take this book, follow through, and it can tell you. I have one for fish over there as well.
I want that one.
So a dichotomous key basically walks you through a set of steps, and you look at this unknown organism and you answer some questions about it. And it's sort of like a choose your own adventure book where it sends you to another, you know what that is? It sends you to another section where you answer some more questions. It sends you somewhere else until eventually you have identified the species. So here's obviously a really simple example, but to show you how they work. We'll do a bunch of other examples in the next week to help you get used to using those. So if we didn't know what these animals were, we look at one. You start at one, and it typically gives you two sets of choices, A and B, and you decide which one applies. So has tentacles present or absent?
Present.
Present, so it's sending us to 2. Okay, 8 tentacles or more than 8?
8.
It says 8. Okay, it's an octopus. All right, let's look at this one. Tentacles present or absent? Absent. I have to go to 4. Pair of giant claws or pink body?
Pink body.
This is a shrimp. Okay. When you eat a shrimp, you're really eating. Most of the time here, you're eating just the tail. However, when we were in Italy 2 summers ago, they serve shrimp like this, full with the head and antenna
They're so
and everything.
good. They're so good. I love them.
All right, look.
Yeah, you thought.
Look at this one. So tentacles present or absent? Absent. Go to 4. Giant claws, crab. Here, tentacles present or absent? These are present. These are tentacles. Go to 2. 8 or more than 8? More than 8. Go to 3. Tentacles hang down or tentacles coming from the top? Coming from the top. This is an anemone. So when you are using these keys, you basically just follow the steps until it has identified the organism for you. So here's my, what's this called? This is the inland fishes of New York State. And so I'll show you, let's see, let me find the key part.
How do you say it? Dichotomous?
Dichotomous.
Oh, that's way simple.
Now, when you use a key like this, you have to know some terminology. Like sometimes they use to talk about the parts of a fish. Like this one says, it starts off A, has 1 pair of gill slits, jaw present, although mouth is sometimes sucker-like, pectoral fins present. That's A. Or 7 pairs of gill openings, no jaws, the mouth opening in the center of a sucker disc that has horny teeth and a radiating rows of patches in adults. Obviously, you have to know some terminology to know, what is the pectoral fin? Where are the gill openings and so forth. But if you know some basic terminology, you could then identify your fish using a dichotomous key. All right, any questions about using a dichotomous key? We'll get practice on Monday. We're going to watch that video to end up.